Welcome to Murder with the Missus. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy, and today we're going to tell you about Jarret Clark. This is another one that I remember seeing Justice for Jarret posters and stickers everywhere for years after this happened. Jarret was an 18-year-old living in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. It has been said that he was popular, athletic, and kind. He was the lead draftsman at Eagle Design Services in Tulsa. His high school graduation was on May 11th, 2006, and while he had plans to go into the military later that summer, he was spending his graduation weekend doing what a lot of kids do, partying. On Saturday, May 13th, he was going to a small gathering at Wahoo Bay on Fort Gibson Lake, which is in Wagoner, Oklahoma. We've been there many times in our lives. But this group of people was not his typical crowd that he hung out with. But they were described as kind and respectful. Rumors were that he went because of a girl. It was reported that he and Courtney Manzer had been flirting for a little bit, so he went out there because that's where she was going to be. But he was supposed to be home on Sunday because he would be celebrating Mother's Day with his family. As Sunday passed into evening, his parents knew that something was wrong. They had been calling his phone all day and getting voicemail. They were informed by Jarret's ex-girlfriend that Jarret was involved in a fight at Wahoo Bay.
His parents were already worried, but then to hear that something violent happened, that's terrifying to a parent.
It really is, because you can't get a hold of them, you can't find out what's going on. It's scary. And your brain goes into like a million different directions, and you want all the answers right now, but unfortunately you don't get that. The next day, Monday, Jarret's dad and a park ranger go out to search and find one of Jarret's shoes and his jacket, so the park was closed. The sheriff interviewed the others who were there that night. The main people were Brandon Hargrove and his girlfriend, Courtney Manzer. Yes, the same Courtney that Jarret had been flirting with. Brandon's sister, Dana Hargrove, and her boyfriend, Anthony Wallen, along with Wayne Humphrey. Jarret had actually rode out to the lake that day with Brandon and Courtney. They said that Jarret was very drunk and had been taking a lot of Xanax and got into a shoving match with the other three guys at around midnight. It was said that Brandon didn't like the way Jarret and Courtney acted around each other. But after the shoving match, Jarret got his stuff and left on foot. Police contacted his phone company, who said that the last activity on his phone was that Sunday the 14th at 7:05 p.m., and it was to check voice messages. They got the last known location of the phone, and police found it in a dumpster in Broken Arrow. So how it got from Wagoner to Broken Arrow is suspicious, because according to the police report, on Monday, May 14th, which was Sunday, Jarret's ex told police that she got a phone call from Jarret at around 1 a.m., where Jarret was asking her to come to the lake, and she said bye and hung up the phone. She was not hearing it. Then at 2 a.m., she got a text from Jarret saying that they were through and not to call him anymore. Sometime later, she got a phone call from Brandon Hargrove saying that he and his two cousins jumped Jarret and left him face down in the dirt. Then Brandon called her later, saying that after the fight, Jarret had walked away and was trying to call someone to come pick him up, so stories are already changing at a rapid pace. On May 19th, Jarret's body was found floating in the lake a few hundred yards from where the party was. The Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office in Tulsa did an autopsy and said his body showed signs of trauma, but the trauma couldn't be conclusively pinpointed to a beating. It could have been damage he received from just being in the water all of those days. One thing was clear, though. His lungs were full of water, so they can say that he was still alive when he went in and drowned. His dad said that he could swim. He loved the water. He was even a water skier. But the theory was that maybe after the shoving match, he stumbled off because he was so drunk and high that he accidentally ended up in the water.
And that may have made some sense if the others could keep their story straight.
That's true. There's so many different versions of what happened this day. It's crazy. And I've read these statements by friends of these people, classmates, people who were there that night, and they are all different. Everyone had a different story, and it changed every time they told it. And they say that two people can keep a secret as long as one of them is dead. And that's very true. The case sat with no arrests or anything for the next 5 years. In 2012, the Wagoner County sheriffs started from scratch and had a new investigator look into it. Nothing made sense to me as to why it took so long after reading all the statements from 2006 and 2007, because it clearly stated in all the statements that they all admitted to a fight. There were several statements that they put Jarret's body in the water. Then he was found in the water, and that there was a big cover-up. But I guess I can see that they needed some actual evidence, maybe? But they don't have anything new in 2012. Looking at the toxicology report, it shows that Jarret's blood alcohol was very low, and he had a minimal level of Xanax in his system. So it appears he wasn't as intoxicated as they made it sound. So now it doesn't fit the narrative of him stumbling off into the lake. They re-interviewed the key players in this case. Courtney said she was in the tent alone when Jarret crawled in, and he was telling her how pretty she was, and Brandon overheard this, causing him and Jarret to get into a fight. It was mentioned in another statement by a witness that Brandon had wanted to fight Jarret earlier in the night because of the obvious flirting between Jarret and Courtney. But Jarret was very drunk at this time, and Brandon wasn't, so he didn't want to fight someone more incapacitated than he was. But Brandon continued to drink, and once he was good and drunk, he stood outside the tent listening to what they were saying to each other and got mad enough to go ahead and have it out.
So he felt like it would be more of a fair fight at this point?
Right, like they were at the same level of drunkenness. But according to toxicology, Jarret was not at the same level of drunkenness at this point. There were also statements showing that not only did they have the fight, but that Jarret was winning over Brandon, even though Jarret clearly didn't want to fight with him. And that another one of them jumped in to help Brandon, but Jarret was still winning against both of them. So egos came into play at this point. And Dana and Anthony's stories changed several times too, because they started out saying they didn't know anything. But then at this time, they said that after Jarret and Brandon fought, Jarret took off up a hill to call for a ride, and Anthony thought that Jarret had taken off with some of his weed. So he and Wayne chased after him. The others at the campsite packed up to leave because some of the unnamed people out there were adults. And with all the commotion, they figured that the cops were going to be called by other campers in the area, and these people didn't want to be in trouble for contributing to underage drinking. Wayne was in jail at the time for burglary and embezzlement, so the sheriff brought him to Wahoo Bay and had him walk through the events of the night. This time, he had a different story too. He said that there was an altercation between Jarret, Anthony, and Brandon. Anthony held Jarret while Brandon hit and kicked him with so much force that Anthony felt every blow. He said that he was talking now because he had nothing to win or lose except to tell the truth. I didn't see any statements that were available to the public saying that Wayne was there for the disposal of the body, and he never commented on that. He had supposedly already left with the adults that packed up and went home after the fight started. The thing with this is that most of the statements from when the incident happened had a common theme, because they mostly stated that after Brandon and Jarret had their fight, that Anthony took Jarret into the wooded area next to the camp and repeatedly hit him in the face or head with a rock before he drug him back out of the woods, thinking that he had killed him. And that Brandon had got his truck to back it over to load up Jarret's body, but accidentally ran over him, or just his leg, depending on which one you're reading, in the process. Another story was that when Jarret took off to call for a ride, some of them got into a vehicle to drive around and find him and actually ran him over there. I didn't actually see the autopsy report to see if there were any broken bones or indication that he would have been hit by a vehicle, or that his leg had been run over, or that he had been hit in the face repeatedly with a rock, and it wasn't reported either.
They did say that his body had trauma, but they couldn't tell if it was just from being in the water. But I would think that if any of the other stuff happened, that, they would have been able to tell if it wasn't just his body bumping under the water or on, tree branches or debris in the lake that caused it.
Right, because our lakes have a lot of trash in them, a lot of debris. Things are dumped there. I mean, it's just you never know what you're going to get down there, but I would think that being hit by a car would cause more damage than bumping up against a tree.
Yeah.
Now, these things are mentioned many times, and it seems more likely, based on the autopsy, that he was just beaten unconscious with fists and maybe not a weapon. But we've seen autopsies that miss stuff or reported incorrectly when families have to have a second one done. Plus, for the police having to sift through all the different stories to find out what happened is a daunting task. And Jarret's clothes that he was wearing also had vegetation on them from the woods near the campsite. A botanist was able to match the plant types up for them. But that could have also been from when he helped gather firewood earlier in the evening. But his sock was a key piece of information for them. The top of his sock showed damage, but the bottom was relatively clean. I've seen the word shredded used to describe the top of this sock. That's an indicator the body was dragged, so he did not enter the lake of his own volition. In 2014, Courtney was arrested for first-degree murder. Police said that the crime was putting his body in the water, and they believed that, at minimum, Courtney and Dana helped put the body in the water to cover up the crime. Courtney's statement in 2015 shows that she was in the tent because she was sleepy from the Xanax, so she went in there to lay down. Jarret crawled in, and Brandon overheard them talking, so he pulled Jarret out. They got into a shoving match, and Jarret walked up the hill to call for a ride. Anthony and Wayne chased him up the hill because of the weed situation. Brandon and Courtney packed up their campsite, and as they were leaving, they hollered for Jarret, but got nothing. She then fell asleep in the truck and woke up at Dana's apartment. Anthony was talking about how hard he had hit Jarret with the rock and saying he thought he had killed him. She also said that Brandon had Jarret's phone. Brandon took her to work the next morning and told her that they didn't mean to hurt Jarret, and that Brandon, Dana, and Anthony were going back to the lake to look for his body. Again, this is her story of what happened, and there were a lot of statements from people back in 2006 where she had told many different stories to different people. Even that she had told people that they put his jacket and shoe at a different area to throw the cops off. So we still don't know exactly what happened, but they do believe that Anthony and Brandon were responsible for Jarret's death. Courtney's charges were reduced to conspiracy to be an accessory after the fact, and she got 2 years. DOC information shows that she has been released as of now. In 2014, Anthony was charged with first-degree murder. In 2016, he pled guilty to a lesser second-degree murder and was sentenced to 20 years, with 8 years of prison time and the remaining 12 on parole. DOC information shows that he has been released as of now. Dana struck a deal to testify against the others for the prosecution. She pled guilty to obstruction and got 2 years probation. Because as I always say, first to talk, first to walk.
She walked immediately, no jail time. That's so frustrating.
Yeah, she literally did not see a day in jail, even if she helped cover up. Some of the stories were that she literally blocked to where people couldn't see when they were putting the body in the water. So she's a key point. She helped. She was there. That puts her at the scene. That puts her helping in the crime. Even though
she's an accessory.
Even though she didn't put him in the water, she helped.
Yeah.
And then kept it secret. And there was a lot of there's a lot of statements from Courtney's coworkers and stuff like that that said that Dana and a couple of other guys had been driving around her place of work the next day or a couple days later and just waiting for her, just trying to get to her to, I don't know, tell her not to tell or intimidate her. I don't know what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
It's just, ugh. And I'm sure you may have noticed that I haven't mentioned Brandon's charges or his sentence. And that's because Brandon died in a car accident in 2008. He was the passenger in a car with 3 other males and 1 female. It was reported in the news as traveling at high speeds, and there may have been alcohol involved. The female was the only one in the car wearing a seatbelt. She asked the driver to slow down, but he wouldn't. It looked like the wheel dropped off the left-hand side of the road, and the driver likely tried to correct but overcorrected because they ended up actually going off the right-hand side of the road. They just missed a guardrail and ended up overturned in a creek just after 10 p.m. They were found early the next morning when a passerby saw skid marks on the road and stopped to look. He yelled down, and the woman yelled back for help. She was the only survivor. News reports show that the car filled with 1 foot of water, and while I was unable to find an official cause of death, some reports stated that Brandon drowned, which would be karma in action.
Yep, definitely.
Because to drown in 1 foot of water. But like I said, there were so many reports on here. It was just hard. It took a long time to sift through, hard to see kind of what was going on. So while it's frustrating that they had all these reports back in 2006 and 2007, I can still see where they're like, 16 people are telling me 16 different stories.
Yeah, and and the whole thing is like there wasn't a whole lot of information on this one.
No, this is very local. And like I said, I remember seeing all the Justice for Jarret stuff, but it's not one that got national coverage like some of these other ones have.
Yeah.
So it's very limited information. So this will be a shorter episode. But we did want to tell his story because these people took this kid's life like he was just getting started and literally got a slap on the wrist.
Yeah. And most people know that from this area know about this from Justice for Jarret.
Yeah.
That's what springs to mind whenever, you mention anything about this case or whatever. That's the first thing that pops in their head.
It really does. Some people this weekend had asked us what we were going to do next. And when I said, I'm looking into Justice for Jarret, they're like, I remember that.
Yeah.
But it's not something that people still talk about, but it is something that people will remember.
Yeah. I mean, it was just another thing. It's like, could more have been done? Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yeah.
It's difficult, when you see a kid that just graduated, didn't even get to enjoy his graduation, really.
Yeah.
It's tough because he was young.
He was just a baby.
It's just young, but I mean, looks like everybody got some prison time except for one.
The key players,
except for two. One died, but
well, he got his own kind of justice.
Yeah, but then the one, she just basically
his sister.
Yeah, Brandon's sister.
Yeah, it's Brandon's sister.
Oh, well, there you go.
Mm-hmm. So, and I want to say too that when I think about this, I didn't know a whole lot of details back then because this was a long time ago. And so I knew kind of it, but not full details, like I said. But then when I started looking into it, I had come into this thinking that Brandon was the one. Brandon did it. Jarret was, really
out of a jealous rage,
flirting with Courtney. They were open about it. There's some reports that say that they had actually, been together in the past. And so there was a lot of jealousy, and he seemed very cocky about it, and like he was kind of like the ringleader, which he kind of was. But reading all the statements and seeing what's happened now, I do think that Anthony was the one that was in like full responsibility for what happened to him.
Yeah, but the other ones wasn't helping out none.
No, this was like, what do you call it, group mentality? Like because a lot of reports said that even after Brandon and Jarret had their little fight, that Anthony wouldn't let it go. He was the one, and he had not met Jarret before this.
Yeah. From
what I saw. So it was kind of weird that he had some kind of like anger towards this person he didn't even know, to the point where he could do this.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that. But if you've got it in you, you've got it in you.
Yep, definitely. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Maybe catch us on the next one.
Yep.
And make sure you guys like, share, follow.
Tell your friends.
Go check us out on Spotify. And, till next time.
Bye.
Bye.